Hey guys, so we are going to be using a TI-84 graphing calculator. Some of you may have other versions of this, but it's going to look similar to this. This one's a little bit more updated than what you're going to see in school, but you have probably never seen these kind of graphing calculators before. In middle school, y'all use scientific calculators unless you went out and bought one yourself. Y'all are more than welcome to do that. However, they cost $100. So there are other ways you can get this. If you have a smartphone, you can get the TI-84 graphing calculator app. On the iPhones, it's called Calculate 84, and on the Android, it's called Wabbit Emu. They are both free. They look exactly like this. They do all the functions that we do in class. So whether you are a traditional in-school student or whether you're a virtual student, all of you can get this app to be able to use since you can't take our calculators home with you. If you don't have a smartphone, you can. There are other websites like desmos.com. I'll show you that one that you could go to. It's not going to do the math side of everything, but it'll do the graphing side. So you can at least graph things while you're at home, and you can use this one for that. Just desmos.com, and you can go there. So today we're going to go over our calculator scavenger hunt so y'all can learn where everything is on the calculator and learn how to use them. They're a little bit different from scientific calculators. They have a lot of extra buttons, so it's very important that you know where everything is. This PDF, the calculator notes page, is on Schoology. If you don't have it, you can get it from there. So we're just going to run through it and make sure y'all know how to work these calculators. The first two things at the top are pushing the second and down or second and up button. The second button is always going to be your top blue button on the left, and you'll hit second up or second down, and you'll get this little number in your top corner of your screen. That's just turning your light on your calculator up and down. You don't have to use this. There's no reason you should use this. However, some students have figured it out in the past, and they would turn the light all the way up or all the way down, and then other students wouldn't know how to turn it back to normal. If your calculator ever looks weird or the screen doesn't come on, always check to make sure somebody didn't mess with the brightness of your calculator before you come to your teacher and tell them that your calculator won't turn on. Most of the time, the batteries are not dead. It's just somebody messing with your screen. So make sure you check those first. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to learn the difference between a minus sign and a negative sign. Your calculator has both. If you put the wrong sign in, you put a negative sign when you're supposed to put minus, or you put minus when you're supposed to put negative, it can change the answer for your equation. It can mess up your calculations. So it's very important you know the difference between these. So your minus sign, which is your subtraction sign, that's the gray button located 2 buttons above enter. Enter's at the bottom right. Your minus sign is 2 buttons above that with your plus, your multiply, and your division sign. That's what you're going to use if a question says like 4 minus 3 or something like that. The negative sign is the white button located to the left of enter. It's below number 3. It's down here by itself. It doesn't have the plus and all the other operations with it. It's completely by itself. And it's got parentheses around it. That's how you're going to know it's negative. So when you're putting these in the calculator, you can try it with 6 minus 3. If you hit 6 minus sign 3, obviously you're going to get 3. However, if you do it backward and you hit 6 and the negative sign and then 3 and you hit enter, it's going to give you an error. Sometimes it gives you a number, sometimes it gives you an error. It just depends on how you plug it in and what the problem is, what the question is. So in this case, it gave me an error. So that's how you're going to know you used the wrong minus sign, so you need to go back and use the other one. So also on your screen, the minus sign is going to be bigger. so you can tell which one is the minus. And the negative sign is always going to be a little bit smaller and a little higher than the minus sign. If you want to see them side by side, the minus sign looks like that. The negative sign is a little higher and it's smaller, so you can tell which one is which if you accidentally plug in the wrong one. So let's try see. If you do 4 times negative 3, so 4 multiply the negative 3. Well, 4 times negative 3 is going to be negative 12. However, if you plug it in wrong and you do 4 times a minus 3, you're going to get another error. It can't do 2 operations back to back, a multiply and a minus sign. That's why you have to make sure you're plugging in the right sign, whether it be minus or negative. Now, there are easy ways to tell which one is which when you're looking at the problem. If your sign is in front of the problem, it's a negative. So if it's the very first thing in your problem, it's going to be a negative sign. So this is negative 4 plus 3. That gives you negative 1. If you accidentally put minus 4 plus 3, when you hit minus, it's going to pull up answer. Answer right here means it's going to take whatever you have before that and subtract the 4 plus 3. And it's going to give you a completely different answer. So if your sign is in front, it's going to be a negative, which is going to be this bottom button in parentheses. If it's between the numbers, it's a minus sign. So this one right here, that's not 4 negative 3. That is 4 minus 3, which obviously is 1. So a good way to remember which one is which. The last little note, when the sign is the first symbol or number in the parenthesis, it's negative. So this one right here, this is not 4 plus a minus 3. That's 4 plus a parenthesis negative 3. It goes off the same rule as this one. Because it's your first symbol with the number, it's going to be a negative because that's the first symbol in that group. And with that number, it's going to be a negative. So 4 plus a negative 3 would give us 1. Same thing if you're doing squared. You have that negative 5. It's your first symbol within that group, within that parentheses. So it's going to be a negative. And then squared. If you go and plug in a minus 5 and square it, it's going to give you an error. So these are very easy ways to figure out if you're using the right sign. Most of the time it's going to give you an error, so you can go back and double check it. Make sure you put minuses where they go, negatives where they go. So if it's the first symbol in a group, first symbol at the front, first symbol in a group, those are going to be negative signs. If it's in between and it comes right after a number, that's going to be your minus sign. Okay, the next one. If you want to square a number, like 2 squared, 4 squared, stuff like that, you're going to enter your number first. So our first one's 3 squared. So I'm going to enter 3. And then you're going to press the X squared button. Your X squared button is located on the left side, and it's right smack in the middle. That'll give you 3 squared, and then your calculator will solve it for you. You can also do these. 25 squared. Enter your number first, and then hit the middle on the left, the middle button on the left column for squared, and enter. Same thing for 42 squared and for 18 squared. So this little X squared symbol is always going to square your answers for you. Now, if you have a negative, so for example on number 5, if you have a negative 2 squared, when you plug that one in, this one has parentheses around it, so it's very important that you keep those parentheses. Your parentheses are located above buttons 8 and 9. So if you get your parentheses, a negative 2, it's negative because it's the first symbol in your group, in your parentheses. Negative 2, close your parentheses, then square it. Make sure it looks exactly like the screen. parentheses, -2, close parentheses, then squared. If you enter on that, you're going to get 4. However, if you do what A says and don't put the parentheses, just put a -2 squared, what answer do you get that time? Well, if you leave off the parentheses, you're going to get a -4. The reason that is because those parentheses are grouping your -2. That's a -2 squared, so it's -2 times another -2. Negative times negative is positive, it cancels out and leaves you with 4. The second one doesn't have parentheses. These exponents are special. They only go to what they touch. That squared is touching your 2. It's not touching the negative. It was different with the parentheses because the 2 was touching the parenthesis, so it includes everything. On this one, your squared is only touching the number, not the whole group. So parentheses include the whole group. Without parentheses, that squared only goes to what it's touching, which is only 2. In that case, it leaves your negative out front, and then it just squares the 2, and it does 2 times 2. That's why it's getting -4. So if you ever see parentheses in your problem, you have to make sure you put them in the calculator. That's the difference between like -4 and $4 is not a big deal, but if you're looking at -400 or +$400, that gets a lot more serious. Nobody wants to have -$400 in the bank. So it's very important to make sure you watch what the paper says and get those parentheses in there if they're supposed to be there. Okay, number 6. To take the square root, you're going to put in the square root first. So you're going to hit second, then x squared. So remember, second is your top blue button. X squared is that same button we used a second ago. That square root is the same button we used a second ago. It's your x squared button. Right above it in blue, you see a square root symbol. That's going to be what you're going to use because you hit second and then x squared, it's going to, I unclicked second. If you hit second and then x squared, it's going to get that square root symbol that's up top. If you don't hit second, it's going to square it. But make sure you hit second and it'll get your square root symbol. And then you just type in your numbers. So square root of 81, obviously 9. If you hit second, x squared again, it'll give you your square root. And then 2,704, you can enter on that one. The next one, second, x squared, to get your square root symbol, 9,216. And then the last one, your second and x squared gives you 65 on that one. So all you have to do, if you ever want these blue symbols up top, you have to hit the blue button. So second to get any of those symbols up top. So second x squared in this case. Okay, number 7. If you want to raise a number to a power, so we have that x squared button that gives us squares like 3 squared, 4 squared, 5 squared. But we're not always going to use squared. Sometimes we're going to cube it. Sometimes we're going to raise it to the 5th power or the 12th power. If you ever have to raise something to a power, to an exponent, you're going to use this little up arrow looking button. This is not the gray up button. This is called a caret key or a rooftop key. And it's the black button located below the 4 big arrows. It's right here under clear. Or if you want to look above all your operation symbols, it's right there. So that's going to give you your rooftop button. So you put the number in first. So for 3, or for A, you're going to put in 3. Then you hit the little rooftop, that's going to take you up to the exponent, and you can put in whatever number it asks for. So in this case, 10. So that'll give you 3 to the 10th power. And you just hit enter. You can do it again for B. We put in our number first, 4. We hit this little rooftop caret key. That'll take us to the exponent. And then we put in our exponent of 8. And then you just hit enter. Okay, for C, we have 10, so it works for 2 digits too. Put in your little rooftop button. And then we want to take it to the 3rd power. So we're going to put in 3 and just hit enter. Now again, going back to what we talked about earlier, those parentheses. If you don't put the parentheses in, it can totally change your answer. So you have to make sure you get those parentheses. Remember, parentheses are above 8 and 9. So open your parentheses, put in your -2, negative because it's the first symbol. It's only minus if it's in the middle. This is the first symbol in the parentheses. So -2, close your parentheses, hit your rooftop, and 21. Make sure it looks exactly like your paper. Open parenthesis, -2, close parenthesis, 21. Same thing over here. Don't put your exponent in the parenthesis. Don't drop your parentheses. Make sure it looks exactly the same. And then hit enter. Same thing on E. Open parentheses, -3. Negative because it's your first symbol. Close your parentheses, then put your exponent. So close your parentheses, do your rooftop button to get your exponent and put in 4. It's very important that we always look at our page and make sure our calculator looks exactly the same. If it doesn't look exactly the same, it could give you a very wrong answer. Okay, number 8. Some actions we're going to see in the calculator require us to use parentheses to get the correct answer. We've talked about that a couple times. If you don't put the parentheses in and you're supposed to, it's going to give you a wrong answer. So if we solve these two, A and B, one of them has parentheses and one of them doesn't, we need to see what the answer is going to be for both of them. Your calculator will only do order of operations correctly when you enter it exactly how you see it on the paper. Like for what we did a second ago, for number 7, that -3 to the 4th power, had we have left those parentheses off, it would have given us -81. So we have to make sure we're putting it in exactly how we see it on the paper. So let's try number 8. So for A, plug it in exactly how you see it. We have a parenthesis, 8 plus 9. This is a minus sign. Because it's not the first thing in the group, it's a minus sign. It has to be first to be a negative. And then 4, close your parenthesis, times 2 outside. We'll see what we get for that one. 26. So if we leave off the parenthesis but keep everything else the same, we have our 8 plus 9. Again, that's a -4 because it's in the middle. It's not at the beginning of our phrase. And then times 2, none of that in parentheses. It changes our answer to 9. I don't know about you, but I'd rather have $26 than $9. So we have to make sure we're plugging it in correctly if it gives us parentheses. Okay, for C you have these little brackets. These brackets are just fancy way of writing parentheses. They try not to give you too many parentheses at once so you don't get confused. So they'll throw in brackets. It's just a parenthesis. It's not a big deal. We don't have a bracket button on here, so we're just going to make it parentheses. So we have our 2 outside. That bracket is just another type of parenthesis. And then 10 This symbol right here, that's going to be your minus sign, again, because it's not first. Your 10 was first. This is in the middle, so it's a minus sign. Another parenthesis, 1 plus 3. Close your parenthesis, and then you have that squared between your parenthesis and your bracket. So you've got to make sure it's between your parentheses here. So squared was over here on the left, right in the middle, and then close your final parenthesis. So 2, open parenthesis, 10 minus, remember minus is over here with the other operations. Open another parenthesis, 1 plus 3, close, squared, then close it again. For this one, we get negative 12. Now, these are all the same numbers across the bottom, but your parentheses are in different places. So we have to see how the parentheses change it if we put it in the wrong place. So for this one, for D, everything's in the exact order except we left the middle parenthesis off. So if we leave that off, does it change our answer? Well, let's check it out. So we have 2 outside, a bracket, which again is just another type of parenthesis. So put in your parenthesis. And we have 10 minus, because it's in the middle, 1 plus 3, and then squared before we close the parenthesis. Squared is over here on the left, and then close your parentheses. So it should look exactly like it does on your paper. For that one, if we leave out those middle parentheses, we're going to get 36. So it completely changes your answer. Let's see what the last one does. We still have all our parentheses, but the squared is in a different place. So if we move that squared inside instead of keeping it out of the parentheses like it was originally, let's see if it changes our answer. So again, 2, get your bracket, which is just a parenthesis, and then 10, again minus because it's in the middle, open your parenthesis, 1 plus 3, but again, this time our squared is inside. So if we put the parenthesis in the wrong spot, let's see what it does. So square it, and then we have a parenthesis and a bracket. Again, brackets are just parentheses, so we're going to have 2 parentheses. So if we move our parenthesis by accident, does it change it from the original negative 12 answer? And in this case, it does. It gives us 0. So this is just an example. These problems are examples of why it is so important that we make sure we put our equations into the calculator exactly how you see them on the paper. If you don't, it gives you a completely different answer. If you accidentally put the parenthesis in the wrong spot, if you leave off a parenthesis, if you put a minus instead of a negative sign or a negative instead of a minus sign, it totally changes your answer, or it just gives you an error like we found in the first couple problems. Okay, so number 9, if you want to convert a decimal to a fraction, all you're going to have to do is enter the decimal. So we're going to enter the number into our calculator. I'm going to clear this out. We're going to put 0.74. You don't have to put the 0. A lot of people do, but it's completely optional. So 0.74. Then you're going to click the math key. The math key is going to be over here on your left, right underneath your green alpha key. You're going to hit math, and then it says fraction first. We're going to pick number 1. You can either click the 1 button, or you can just hit enter, and then enter to get your answer. So put in your decimal, and then click math, which is on the left side at the top, and then enter to get fraction, and enter to get your answer. And it'll change it to a fraction for you, so you don't have to do the math behind that. It'll always simplify it for you, so you don't even have to simplify fractions anymore. Like if I put in, well, we're going to get to that on number 10, so I'll wait till then. But it's always going to give you the simplified version of the fraction. It's never going to make you do any extra work. So let's try B. 0.52. So I'm going to leave the point off this time. Well, I'll show you with the other one. If we put in 0.74 and we don't put in the 0 and do math, enter, it's still going to give us the same exact number. So again, that 0 in front, you don't have to have it. If you want it, you can totally put it in. So for B, we got 0.52. We're going to hit math on the left, right under alpha, right under your green button. Math. We want a fraction, so we're just going to go with number 1. So enter on that, and then enter to get your answer. And it'll give us our simplified fraction. For C, we have 0.16. Math under alpha. Oop, not sign. Sorry. We have math. We want a fraction. So enter on fraction, because that's what we want, and enter to get your answer. And the last one, we have 0.8 or 0.8 if you want to put the 0. Math over here on the left. Enter on fraction, and enter one more time to get your answer. So very easy way for you to get a fraction so you don't have to change anything and do any math by hand. Your calculator will do it all for you. Okay, you can also use the calculator to simplify fractions. So you don't have to do these by hand. You can use your calculator. All you have to do is enter the fraction into the calculator. To do that, you're going to press alpha. Alpha is going to be your green button over here on the left. And then you're going to click Y equals. Now, if you have older calculators that you already have at home, a lot of times Y equals is scratched off, but that's going to be your top left, all the way at the top, right below the screen, Y equals button. It's going to pull up all these weird letters, all these weird symbols and stuff. All you need is the first one, this regular numerator over denominator fraction. That's all you're going to need. So just click enter on that, and we're going to put in our fraction. So for A, we want 950 over 1450. So put in 950, and then you're going to go down to the next row. You're going to go down to the denominator, so click the down button, and then 1450. And you click enter. It's going to simplify it for you. That'll be your final answer. It's never going to leave an extra step in there that you have to do by hand. It's going to do absolutely everything for you. So again, let's do that with B one more time. To put in the fraction, you're going to hit alpha, your green button, and then Y equals at the top, the very, very top. And we want numerator over denominator. We don't want any of this other fancy stuff. Just the first one. Numerator over denominator. And we're going to put in 85 over 115. So you put 85, go down to the denominator, and put in 115. And then you just hit enter to get your answer. Okay, for C, again, alpha, the green button, Y equals at the very top, and we want numerator over denominator. So enter on that to select it, and 99 over 36. So 99 on top, click the down button, and put in 36. And then you just hit enter. Okay, for D, we're going to click alpha, Y equals, numerator over denominator. We want the very first selection, 108 over 39. So 108, go down to the denominator, and 39 on the bottom. And it'll simplify it for you. We're going to use this a lot throughout the year. That's why I'm taking my time with this, to make sure you understand exactly what buttons to push, and how to get there. Although if you forget at any point through the year, keep this page, or you can come back to this video and you can always refresh your memory on what buttons to push. So for E, the very last one, we want alpha, y equals at the very top, numerator over denominator, and then we're going to put 27 over 68. 27 on top, go down to the denominator, put 68 on the bottom, and hit enter to get your answer. Now, if you notice, this one didn't change. That's because this one cannot be reduced. There's no number that multiplies into both 27 and 68. If your calculator can't simplify it and it gives you the same exact answer, that means this is 100% reduced, 100% simplified, and there is nothing else that you have to do to this problem. That's just the answer. It will always simplify your work for you. It's never going to leave something unsimplified. So if it gives you the same answer, you are completely done. Write that answer on your page and move on. There's nothing else for you to do on that problem. So alpha, y equals, enter to get your numerator over denominator, and you just plug in the number and it'll simplify it for you. Okay, number 11. Sometimes we're going to have to solve absolute value problems. Absolute values are these little bars around your number. For these, we're going to have to go to math, which we went to a little earlier. So math is over here on the left. It's right below alpha. You're going to go to the right where it says num. So click the right button. Then it's going to say abs. That's going to be your absolute values. So we want to select that. You can either click number 1 or just push enter. And it'll give you those absolute value bars. Now, depending on what version of the calculator you have, your calculator may say, it may keep that abs button. And it may say abs parenthesis, and then you can plug in your problem. It may not have the bars, but it's still going to do the same thing. So whether it actually says abs or it plugs in the bars for you, it works the same exact way. So don't freak out if yours looks a little bit different. Okay, once you get your absolute value bars, you're going to enter your numbers. So for A, we have our absolute values, and we're going to put negative 45. Remember, our negatives are going to be at the beginning of a phrase. They're not going to be in the middle. So this is the first thing inside our absolute value. So it's going to be a negative symbol. Negative is down here at the bottom in parentheses. And then 45. You can go out of it if you want. It's not going to change your answer if you click the right button. Or you can just go ahead and click enter. And your answer is going to be 45. Absolute value answers, for anything that comes out of an absolute value, those are always going to be positive. So whether you do the absolute value of 9, you're still going to get 9. If you do the absolute value of negative 9, well, hold on, of negative 9, you're still going to get 9. Absolute value is a distance. Like I can walk forward or I can walk backward, but I'm still taking a positive amount of steps. I'm just going in a different direction. That's all absolute value is. You're going the same amount of distance, you're just going in the opposite direction. So like if you drive 2 miles to school and you drive 2 miles home from school, you're still going 2 miles, you're just going the opposite way. That doesn't make your distance negative, it just makes your distance a different direction. So absolute value is always positive because it's a distance. It doesn't matter which way you go, it's still a distance. So, and we will talk about that more in class later on in the semester. That's just a quick overview of why your answer is coming out positive. So the absolute value of negative 45 comes out to a positive 45. Okay, for B, remember, we've talked about this a couple times. It's very important that you plug it in exactly how you see it. The first thing on our problem is not an absolute value bar. The first thing is 3. So we have to make sure we plug in 3 first. Then we go get our absolute value bar. So remember, we're going to go to math, over here on the left, right underneath alpha. We're going to go over to num, click the right button, and then we want abs. So just click that one. And then we put in the rest of our absolute values. This one, this symbol right here, that's going to be a negative. Yes, it's in the middle of all this, but it is the first thing in your absolute value bars. It's not in the middle of your absolute value, it's first. That makes it a negative 12. And then your plus 3. Now again, you can go to the right and go out of your absolute value bars, or you can stay in your absolute value bars. It's not going to change your answer. All you have to do is hit enter. So that one's going to be 27. Okay, the next one for C, remember we have to plug it in exactly how we see it. Our first thing is not absolute value. Our first thing is a negative sign. Why is it a negative sign and not a minus sign? Because it's first. It's the first thing in our problem, so it's a negative sign. Then we put in our absolute value bar. So math, go over to the right to num, and then we want abs. Hit enter on that. Then plug in the pieces in the middle. 4 plus 3. And then again, you can go out of it. You can stay in your absolute. It doesn't matter. Just hit enter. Now that one came up negative. I told you earlier, distance is always positive. Absolute value is always positive. What came out of your absolute value, that 4 plus 3, if you just put that part in, that was positive. It gives you a positive 7. The only reason this one is negative is because of that negative sign outside. That negative times all of that, times that 7, gives us a negative 7. So it's possible to get negative answers on our absolute values only if the negative is outside. Everything inside is going to come out positive. All of your distances inside come out positive, but stuff on the outside, that negative, changes our answer. So we get a negative 7 instead of a positive 7. For the last one, we're going to have the same thing. We have a negative outside, so our answer is going to be negative. So we need to put that negative 5. Again, why is it negative? Because it's first. So that negative 5 outside. Then we're going to grab our absolute value bar by hitting math over here on the left. Go over to num, so hit right. And we want abs, so enter on that. Plug in the stuff inside exactly how you see it. Don't change the order, don't move parentheses, don't do anything. Plug it in exactly how you see it. We have our absolute value, which we've got over here. We've got 45. Plug that in. Then we've got our parenthesis, which remember is above 8 and 9. So open parentheses above 8. This is a 4 minus 12. It's minus because it's not first. It is in the middle of a phrase. It's only minus if it comes first, like the negative, it's only negative if it comes first, like the negative 5 here, the negative at the beginning of this. Remember, this one was negative because it was first in our phrase. It was first in our absolute value bar. It wasn't in the middle like the plus sign. So this one is in the middle of 4 minus 12, so that is a minus sign. So 4, make sure you grab minus 12. Close your parenthesis. You still have that absolute value bar outside. Make sure it looks exactly like the paper. A negative 5, because it's first, it's negative. Absolute value, 45, parenthesis, 4 minus 12. Minus because it's in the middle. And then hit enter. So negative 1800. So, that gives you a little rundown on absolute value. Again, we're going to talk about these more pretty much every day as we go through this semester. We'll talk about negatives, we'll talk about minuses, order of operations, absolute values, all of that kind of stuff. So if you need more help on that, we're definitely going to go through and do more of that. Or you can go back and watch the video again or ask your teacher for more help on that. But that just gives you a rundown of the basic buttons that we're going to use. We're going to use a lot more throughout the semester, and we'll show them to you as we get to them. But this just gives you a rundown of what we need for right now. So for number 12, if your calculator messes up, it keeps giving you an error, you can't figure out what's wrong with it, it's just completely messed up, you can clear out your calculator, and it'll take everything back to factory settings, and it should fix absolutely any problem that's wrong with it. All you have to do is at the second, which is that blue button on the left, you're going to hit mem, which is your plus sign. So down here on the right, it says mem above it. That's your memory. So second plus, and then we want 712. So we're going to reset. We're going to do all of our RAM, reset all of it, so 1, and then 2 to reset. It'll pull up the screen every single time. You can just hit enter to clear out of it, or you can hit clear, and it'll make it go away. So I'll do it one more time. Second, mem is your plus sign, your memory. We want 7 to reset, so you can just click 7, or you can scroll down to it. I'm just going to click 7. We want to clear all of it, so 1, and then we want to reset 2. Second, mem, 712. This is going to help you, especially when you're taking a test, or when you're taking the state test, or the NCASE test, the Case 21, because teachers are not allowed to help you with calculator problems at that point, because they expect you to know how to work the calculator by the time you get there. So if something completely messes up on your calculator, just remember second mem 712. That'll take it back to factory settings and clean out any problem that was there. To turn your calculator off, you're just going to hit the second button, and then you're going to click on. Right above on it says off. Mine's not going to turn off because it's digital, but second on will turn your calculator off. The last question on here, number 14, that's just for in-class students. For students at home, for VIP students, y'all don't need to worry about that. Y'all can change your batteries as needed. But for in-class students, that's just for y'all. So remember, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to rewatch this video. You can look up YouTube videos if you want to. You can ask your teacher, any of those. So let us know if you have any questions about the calculator.